Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Cloud Wars as we are exploring what is going on in the financial services area, especially now with some big innovations from the IBM Cloud for Financial Services. We're delighted to have with us today Ivo Koerner, who is the General Manager and Chief Revenue Officer for IBM Cloud. Ivo, welcome. Great to see you.
Bob, thank you for having me.
Sure. Ivo, such remarkable, exciting, fast-changing times here overall in the world of the business world with the new entrants from what cloud can do, different anticipation about where AI can head things. But I just wanted to check with you because you speak with financial services companies from all over the world on a regular basis. What are the big trends going on right now, Ivo, that as IBM Cloud sees those?
Bob, I think, let's say, first of all, as always, a super good question. I think there is the fundamental trend in the financial services industry didn't significantly change over the last, I would say, couple of quarters, but the environment changed. So the main trends are definitely still, how do you drive more digitalization into your banking processes? Let's say, how do you either compete or embrace the fintechs, which bring up completely different digital business and business approaches into the mix. And I think it's not always just fighting, but embracing those fintechs and fintech solutions. I think this digital transformation is still at the core of the change that's happening in the financial services institution. I think what made it even more complicated, I think in the past we always had a discussion between the compliance and regulatory requirements that you still need to adhere. You get feedback from banks and IT leaders in the banking environment that they spend 60 to 70% of their budgets just to maintain compliance. And that leaves only 30% for innovation, which is difficult. But I think right now, when in many of the economies around the world, we also talk about recession, even that budget is getting smaller. And the part that you can use for innovation is really small. So I think the pressure is even higher and the transformation need is as big as it was in the last couple of quarters.
Yeah, and Ivo, on the outside, it isn't like, whether it's the customers, whether they're consumers or business customers are willing to sit back and say, hey, these financial services companies have a lot on their plate. I'll just wait until they get... So there's pressure from all different directions, right?
Absolutely, and I think you're spot on. Let's say the market and the market opportunity and your clients are not waiting. They are not willing. They will jump ship, especially in the digital world, by far faster than they could in the past. And the minute they see a benefit in digital solutions, and we see a lot happening in the payment industry. If it's even if it's just on the consumer side, but a lot of it is already swapping back into the B2B payment side. So no one is willing to wait because whatever you are used to consume as a, let's say, consumer, you also want to see on the business side. So that pressure is increasing. And if you don't, let's say, if you're not innovative enough, you definitely will lose part of your client base. And again, coming back to what we said, recession, the banks are trying to keep as much cash as they want. They are not innovating. It really puts a lot of pressure on the business models.
Well, Eve, I want to get your thoughts on, what you had described there about the fintechs being, early on seen as competitors or rivals, and now moving into an area of partnership along with, other partners for IBM. But first, could you just talk a little bit about going back to that point you made? If a bank has to spend, or a financial services company has to spend 60 or 70% of its total IT budget on those areas around compliance, leaving so little for innovation, how do they get out of that?
And that's basically the area, Bob, that we are addressing with IBM Cloud for Financial Services. That's, let's say, a solution that we co-created and co-built with the industry. We established 2 years ago a Financial Services Council where we basically invited chief risk officers, CISOs from banks, financial services institutions to give us their feedback. What are the requirements that you need that stopping you, let's say, to use or take the benefits from cloud into your organization, free up innovation capacity. So we really wanted to understand what is stopping them, what is causing delays. And that's where we developed, let's say, IBM Cloud for Financial Services with a compliance framework that allows faster deployment and being, let's say, compliant and have a monitoring with the regulators to show that you're compliant in your workloads. Yeah. And if you just take the workloads, that's not making the trick. Yeah. But we extended this into the ecosystem world, meaning ISVs and fintechs. Yeah. The minute you as a fintech or ISV are basically using the same framework, it reduces the time to market for you as an ISV and for the banks. Yeah. And that is basically reducing the 60% to what we think the minute you use a compliance framework to 30-40% and frees up innovation budget and innovation capacity. Yeah.
Yeah, it just sounds like one of those things that, Ivo, you look at it and right in a vacuum, or theoretically, as you look at it, you say, well, this just doesn't make sense. But the realities on the ground, this is how business has been done for decades. So it's got to be such an interesting time as you get in there, reset those relationships you have with fintechs, deeper relationships with your partners, and suddenly everybody's sort of pushing in the same direction rather than, against each other. So how is this unfolding, your new relationship with partners, both fintechs and other sorts of ISVs?
You basically take that in numbers. Yeah. By now, if you take the council members, we have 81 banks with 135 participants on a global scale. Yeah, and we now have councils established, a global council, an US-based council, a European council. We are just starting a council in APAC and Japan. So around the globe. And let's say you see the high interest and the need for this still co-creation approach. Yeah. At the end of the day, I think maybe there's potentially 1,000. Yeah, let's take a number, 1,000 potential rules globally that you need to adhere. Yeah, I think right now we already cover 80% of it. So that the feedback that we're getting is basically an instant feedback from discussions they have with their regulators. And I don't want to, let's say, make the topic even bigger, but banking is also ruled by all the sovereign cloud discussions. Yeah, so sovereignty is another dimension that is immediately feeding into this. And that is a way for us to very fast, let's say, get this input from the industry and move it back into our engineering and development process and basically get it into the product. So that is, let's say, an ecosystem and an environment that is really constantly growing. And on the other side, as I just mentioned, we now work with over 50 ISVs to get their solutions certified. Yeah, what we call FS-enabled, which means at the end of the day, they are certified against the control framework. The number is constantly growing. We are getting to 10 certified ISVs as of today. And the minute you have that, I don't want to say it's a stamp, yeah, but the minute you adhere to the compliance, we basically give an instant, constant, real-time monitoring to the banks and reducing their time to implement a solution to 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, which is significantly faster to what they had in the past. Yeah. So you see the ecosystem is growing on both sides, on the banking side, and of course on the solution side with the ISVs. And in that ISVs pool, we also have fintechs. Yeah. So we have Marco Polo Networks is a fintech in the trade finance space that is certified and that is really using our technology already.
So, Ivo, I want to come back because you mentioned a couple of numbers there. You said implementation in weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. For a business where, I guess customers have been accustomed to hearing, what do you mean 6 or 8 quarters? 12 could. That's a remarkable benefit then, right, for the banks. They can, as they undertake the sort of risk that you've described earlier, there's economic pressures and other things. They say, well, wait a minute, this is something we'll find out in, a number of weeks whether we can do this, and it meets the needs of their outside customers. I want it now. That's got to be a big mindset change in your business.
Let's say it is mindset change, and it's honestly a different approach, because I think with that you somehow can, first of all, you can automate the way you onboard and manage third-party risk, because that is the term that basically you use in the banking. You need to manage your third-party risk. So it's reducing your time. It gives you a better, let's say, risk posture in your compliance and risk analysis. So it's a completely different set. And the minute we are talking about this and we are showing it, you see how, I don't want to say the mind is shifting completely in the, let's say, in the banking and line of business discussions we have with the banks, because they fully understand it significantly reduces their time to market with new offerings and new solutions. And that is resonating fantastic today.
And Ivo, it's not a situation where IBM Cloud is coming into this and saying, well, hey, look, we'll do our part, but then you, the customer, you've got to be the one to go out and be the general contractor, and you've got to go pull all these other people together. You're sort of bringing a unified front to your customers, right?
Absolutely. Let's say we bring that unified approach, which means we take on the work to work with the ISV and fintech to help them to be onboarded on the IBM Cloud. Yeah. We also support them in getting, let's say, through the controls framework and have the controls mapping. So we take that work on with us. Yeah. There is still a remaining part that needs to be done in the bank, in the financial service institution, which is they need to go through their risk and regulator internal compliance process. Yeah, that's something we can take away. But that is basically a by far faster approach than if you today assume, you need to talk to the ISV first, you need to bring them on your platform, you need to do the technical enablement, you need to build your audit and compliance structure around it, and then you need to go through the risk process. Yeah. So we basically take what I said, at least 2/3 of the time we take on us and the ISVs. And from an ISV perspective, it's the same thinking, because as an ISV today, you know exactly if you sign a contract with a bank, you still need maybe a year before your solution is really implemented in production. And we can shorten that to the same time that we just discussed. Yeah. So there's a big benefit for everyone. And what we're also starting to work on is with a product that I'm sure you heard about already, is IBM Satellite, which we define as a kind of distributed cloud. We basically populate the controls framework also to other clouds, because IBM's strategy is where we think truly as a hybrid cloud, multi-cloud platform. So we don't expect that every workload is going to run on IBM Cloud. Yeah, we understand that there's going to be workloads on different clouds. There's still going to be workloads on premise, but with Satellite and the control framework, we basically inherit part of the controls to the other platforms, if they support the underlying technical KPIs and APIs. So it's basically helping you to manage your risk, not on IBM Cloud for financial services, but across different platforms that you may use.
Yeah. Ivo, I had two other things I wanted to ask you about. One is, and you've done a very good job in articulating this, but I think one of the real benefits of modern cloud technology, particularly in the area of financial services, is in the minds of the customer, it shifts their whole notion of what was possible, what's impossible, right? I mean, some of the numbers you've talked about, the way you can compress or transform the allocation of their budgets more toward innovation and growth, less toward compliance, 6, 8, 12 weeks instead of 8 or 12 quarters. So in the minds of the customers now, are they seeing what IBM Cloud can do as not just like old technology out, new technology in, but opening up a whole new set of opportunities for what they can do?
It definitely is that way, Bob. Yeah. So because again, for me, this is tying back to you're opening up innovation, not just budget, but you open up innovation capacity. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, yes, we're talking about budget, but you also need to, let's say, allocate skills, you need to allocate resources, and that is basically opening up your whole possibility in a client, in a bank, to use that capacity for, let's say, either defining new business models, working with different partners, building, let's say, maybe a completely new client base, new offerings. So the beauty of it is really opening your possibilities to spend more time and more capital for innovation. That is, I think, that the fundamental thing that we're going to change. And just to add to this one, we also start. Our thinking always starts from a workload perspective. So we don't want to start a technical API service related discussion. So we really start thinking from a client perspective. That's why regulation compliance is one important thing. But fundamentally, for a bank and for every, let's say, enterprise client, you think in workloads. You think, okay, I have a workload, which is either an ISV application, which is a bespoke application, which is application in my core banking system. And the question that you need to ask yourself is, where do I place that workload? In a hybrid cloud world, hybrid multi-cloud world, and especially in banks, that's going to be super critical, because there is more and more reports, and regulators are looking more to understand the concentration risk that you have as a bank because you're critical infrastructure. And concentration risk, again, immediately translate into you need to have either different providers, a mix between on-prem, private cloud, and hyperscaler cloud. So your landscape is getting more complex, and you need to start thinking from, where do I place my workloads? And that, again, if you look at that, I think in the modern world, this workload has 5 characteristics. You need to be resilient. So resiliency is one of the characteristics. Security is one. Compliance is the third one. So what compliance posture do you need? Performance, nothing new in the IT industry, but I think it's critical to understand where you put your workload. And the last one is total cost of ownership. And that's a framework where you position your workload in. And this is the way we are thinking in IBM Cloud. And that's also the main objective of IBM Cloud for Financial Services, where we say our target is mission critical enterprise workloads that currently can't move to any other general purpose cloud, because there's a higher risk, a higher resiliency, and a higher compliance expectation. That's why we built the controls framework. And this is now basically a, let's say, complete view. So from a banking perspective, starting from workload, you can put it on IBM Cloud for Financial Services. You get benefits of the controls framework, innovation budget, and then you still can start looking on different workloads. And it doesn't mean they need to land on IBM Cloud. They can land somewhere else, and we still will ensure that it works coherently with satellite and the compliance framework.
Great. Ivo, last question I wanted to ask you about. I think it touches on so many of the things you mentioned today, but IBM has been dealing with, the world's leading financial institutions for decades, but, maybe 100 years. How are these new capabilities that IBM Cloud is bringing forward, how does that change the view that your customers have and your partners have about IBM here in 2023?
To be honest, what I'm really proud of about the team and what IBM did with the IBM Cloud is, I think we came late to the discussion and late to the party. But as you said, in the financial services industry, we still are the backbone in, let's say, the core banking systems in many of the banks. But with what we built on cloud, with the IBM Cloud for Financial Services, we gained back a position to be asked about our point of view. Where is, let's say, a future cloud environment, or how should a future cloud environment look like? And the discussions that we have now is a different one. But it's basically now linking 100% in Arvind's strategy. He positioned IBM as a hybrid cloud AI company. And if you just rethink what we discussed, in reality, most of the banks run on the mainframe. Everyone is complaining it's too expensive. They try to offload workloads to different platform hyperscalers. But many of them basically struggle with the complication. I think with our understanding and what we now build with the hybrid cloud approach and the underlying technologies, we really open up that you get the best of all worlds. Yeah. Yes, 100% sure a lot of the banking workload will remain on the mainframe. But you need to have, let's say, part of the workloads most likely in platforms like IBM Cloud for Financial Services, but you still need to manage different providers. Yeah, no one will run Office 365 on a different platform than Azure. Right. So you will always have multi-clouds in your IT shop. And with what we are now building and built over the last 2 years, we basically build a coherent strategy and platform to get the best of, let's say, the traditional mainframe workload and the future.
Well, perfect. Ivo, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I just want to check, is there anything that you want to add before we wrap up?
Well, thank you. No, I think I spent all my 250 words.
No, it was great. It's such a fast-changing world, Ivo, and so much going on. Thanks for giving us these insights. And folks, we have been having a great chat here with Ivo Koerner, who's the General Manager and Chief Revenue Officer for IBM Cloud. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Bob.